Right. So I think without further ado, maybe we can start with today's session since both of our speakers are ready and we don't want to keep other parents waiting. All right. Okay. So first of all, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our workshop. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And we are really excited to have you here today with us on this session on creativity and cognitive skills in children, why some children learn, think, and solve problems differently. So, parents, if you feel worried or wonder why your child approach things differently or they seems to learn differently, we will explore how these children think, learn, and develop in different ways, and how understanding these differences can help us become more confident and supportive parents. Okay, so we encourage you all to stay until the end, as we will also be sharing some practical approaches that you can use in everyday parenting for supporting your child more effectively. All right, next page. So let's first introduce you to the speakers today. So we are excited to welcome Ms. Steffi, a certified psychotherapist, together with Darwin, AGT's psychology consultant, for an insightful discussion and the one who will be guiding us through today's topic with both professional insights and also real life understanding. Okay, so before we begin, here is just a few quick housekeeping notes to help the session run smoothly. So first of all, kindly keep your microphone muted unless you are invited to speak. Secondly, if you have any questions while the speaker is sharing, feel free to drop them into the chat box at any time, and our speakers will address them at the appropriate moments, okay? And lastly, do make sure that you stay until the end, as we have some surprises, discounts, and exclusive tips waiting just for those who stay until the end. Okay. And we would also love for you to share some of your takeaways from today's session. So if you hear anything that is something that is insightful or inspiring, please feel free to post it in your Instagram story and tag us at Absolute Genetic Technologies. All right. So for today's session, we will explore about what cognitive skills are and why they matter, how creativity can go beyond arts and also can support problem solving. And then we will also explore why some children face academic challenges, and then how parents can create an emotionally safe environment that encourages learning and growth. So without further ado, let's get started. So I will now hand over the session to our speakers to take over the session and begin today's sharing. Over to you, Darwin.
Okay, thank you very much, Putri, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Really appreciate your participation, your time, and also thank you very much to Ms. Steffi for joining us. Really grateful to have you here with us. Okay, so as mentioned by Putri, it's a very important topic we want to talk about today. When parents, you think about your child's future success, academic performance is obviously like one of the first things that comes to mind. And we naturally want our children to do well in school. Want them to stay motivated and really chase that the goals and reach their potential. But many parents, you might start asking questions like, why does my child lose focus easily? If you see that they're not doing so well, why is my child full of ideas but struggles to complete certain tasks? Why does my child learn differently from their siblings? Sometimes you tend to compare a little bit, you just can't help it, right? And why does studying seem easy for some children, but quite difficult for others? So these questions are, of course, very important because they highlight that something that many parents tend to overlook, which is that children, they're different not only in what they learn, but also in how they think, how they process information, and even solve problems. So today, what we're going to explore is the relationship between creativity and cognitive skills, and why these abilities matter for your child's development, and how you parents can actually support them more effectively. Okay, so to kick off the discussion, I'll actually be passing it back to Steffi, and Steffi can take it away to start with the next point.
Thank you, Darwin. So, in clinical work with children and family, a consistent patterns emerge with the children are not always struggling due to lack of ability. So, but because their way of learning doesn't always match with what we want them to be and how to match how they process their information or cope emotionally. So this is why the children with similar intelligence can perform very differently, and why the same parenting approach can work for only one child but create resistance in one another. So children differ in their natural cognitive and emotional wiring, shaped by both internal tendency and environment. So some of these differences are influenced by genetics. Just as children inherit physical traits, they can always inherit natural tendency related to attention, memory, creativity, problem solving, stress tolerance, and learning preference. So this doesn't determine a child's future, but it does influence how they naturally approach learning and challenge. So we have to understand this shift, the shifting parenting form. Why is my child not like the other? To how do I work with my child naturally way of functioning? So now we go for section 1. What are the cognitive skill is? So let's start with a basic questions. What exactly a cognitive skill is? So parents, what do you think? And do share your thoughts, and I will wait for your thoughts. Take your time. Thank you. Thanks for your sharing. So cognitive skills are the mental ability that allow children to learn, remembering, reasoning, solving problems, and process information. So for example, when a child follows instructions, remember what they were asked to do. They were asked to do to figure out how to complete a task step by step. They are also using cognitive skill. So when we think of cognitive skill as the operating system of your child's brain, when your child forget to bring home their homework, it's not always being messy. It might be that their memory systems has a different capacity. So which means key cognitive skills include attention, the ability to focus on filter out all the distractions. And working memories will be goes to the holding the information in our mind while using it. So processing speed, how quickly the brain can handle all the information. So go for executive functions. You know, they know how to plan, they can do the organizations and self-regulating. So let's go for the next page. So an important point for parents to understand is that the cognitive skill do not develop identically in every child, while practice and environment play an important role. Research also shows that the traits such as attention, memory, reasoning, and problem-solving ability are influenced to varying the degree by genetics. So when a child struggling, it is not always about effort. Sometimes it is a specific cognitive skill that needs support. So now we go for sections 2. The creativity is more than the art, which I agree. The parents, what do you think? When you hear the word creativity, please share your thoughts and I will wait for your answer. Thank you, Pai. So I think of it as a form of art. Yeah, it's true. Yes, exactly. So really thank you for sharing your thoughts. So when we talk about the creativity, many people immediately think of drawing, painting, music, or other artistic activities. While these are certainly forms of creativity, the concept is much more broader. So creativity is the ability to generate ideas, explore possibilities, make connections, and approach situation in flexible way. From a developmental psychology perspective, creativity is a cognitive process, not just an artistic skill. So when we think about creative thinking, it will help children to solve the problems, adapt the challenges, generate new skills, think more independently, and explore different perspectives. So next, we will go for how they can be thinking more highly creative way for the children. They may just ask more questions, many questions as they please, and challenge assumptions with the parent or the teachers, become more bored with the repetitive tasks. So they like to try new things and experiment with different solutions and approach problem in unconvenient way. So these all behaviors can sometimes be mistaken for being distracted or non-compliant. For example, in a math task, one child followed the taught method, while the other one used a different approach, but still get the correct answer. The second child is not being difficult. They may be demonstrating flexible thinking. The goal is to teach the structure without shutting down original thinking. So let's go for session 3. Why some the bright children still struggling? So why do some children who seem very bright still struggle in learning or performance? Does this sound familiar to you, parents? So maybe you give a thumbs up if you say yes. It's actually more common than many parents think. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the thumbs up. So now, intelligence alone does not predict performance. So a child may be very strong in reasoning, but their natural profile may make sustained focus, organization, or emotional regulations more effortful. So this is also where many parents unintentionally misinterpret the behavior. A child who is inconsistent may be labeled as careless. A child who forgets the step may be seen as not paying attention. So a child who avoids difficult tasks may be seen as unmotivated. However, these will beneath this all behavior may be underlying all the skill gaps that require supports rather than punishment. So take a child like Sam, for example. He's so great in problem solving, but often lose his worksheet. So teachers may see him as a careless person. But the issue isn't intelligent. It's a executive function. The skill that help us stay organized and manage the task. So how to fix this? Instead of focusing the lost worksheet, make staying organized easier. Put a single tray or box by the door where all the school work goes. So when the environment supports the child by plugging the skill gap, their strength have a better chance to shine. So now we go for session 4. Different children learn differently. Oh, so Pai say my child does not finish a given task, he start with the interest. Okay. Thank you for the feedback. So now we go for sessions 4. Different children learn differently. So there is no single way that all the children learn the best. So children differ in how they process information. They always stay engaged and how to understand the concept. So from an educational perspective, this is why a one-size-fits-all approach often leads to frustrations. For example, a child who needs movement struggles in a long period of sitting down and listening to parent or the teacher in the school or classroom. So a child who needs repetitions may not retain information after one explanation. So a child who learns visually may struggle with purely verbal instructions. So when teaching methods do not match learning preference, children may appear distracted or uncooperative. even when they are actually trying to understand. This is where many parent-child conflict begins. From my clinical experience, these conflicts are often not behavioral problem, but communications mismatch between the learning styles and teaching methods. So a simple experiment parents can try this with this method. Think about something your child usually struggles to learn, then change the way how you teach it. You can use the drawing method, like instead of explaining to them, let them move while learning. Then turn it to become a discussions. They will be feeling more fun when it comes to discussions. So use a real life example for them. I think they will be more grateful with that. So sometimes the issue is not the child, it's just the method. So now sessions 5, I will pass it to Darwin.
Okay, thank you very much, Steffi, for your sharing.
Welcome.
Appreciate all the information. Also, just maybe want to quickly touch on the comment shared by Ms. Akshata Pai here. My child does not finish a given task, starts with interest, but then most of the times he doesn't finish. Okay, yeah, that's definitely something I'm sure like a lot of parents will find very common and very often you experience this. And as Ms. Steffi shared earlier, maybe it's not a case of the lack of intelligence or even the lack of interest. Like, what could it come from? Maybe it's like, as we shared, it could be just underlying skill gaps, like certain lack of skills that the child has not learned yet and needs a bit of guidance on that can actually help them take more interest or to get better at something. Because sometimes maybe even we experience it as well, right? Like if at the start when you're trying to learn something new and we find it difficult to do, it's normal to lose interest in it very quickly because we feel that if in the earlier stage we're not good at doing it, then maybe sometimes we feel we cannot get good at it ever, like we can never improve. But maybe it's just a case of continuing to practice certain skills and getting the support to improve the skills that over time you get better at it, you get the positive feedback and the positive feeling that you can achieve something when you're doing it. So that can actually improve the interest as well. So that's just something to take note of. Okay, so yeah, going back to the presentation. So yeah, section 5, how creativity and cognitive skills can work together. So yes, we talked about both aspects separately. So now we can talk about how to put these two together. So creativity and cognitive skills, in reality, they do actually work together. In many situations and many aspects. So creativity is like what allows a child to generate ideas, right? And cognitive skills, on the other hand, it helps the child to organize those ideas and execute tasks in a structured way. So both, when they're developed together, it will help children actually think flexibly and also follow through effectively. So it helps that it works together. So for example, a creative child, they may have like many ideas, but they struggle with structure, like how to follow step by step. And a structured child, like maybe more on the cognitive side, they may complete tasks really well. They have that flow, they have the organization. But when it comes to open-ended thinking and thinking of solutions outside the box, that's where they may have certain issues. So in both cases, it's not to say that the child is lacking something or they're lacking the overall full range of skills. It's just that maybe they're simply showing strengths in different areas and different areas of development. So it's about how do you find that balance. Okay, so maybe just look at an example here. Parents, maybe you have seen this in school, like during lessons or group activities. Your child will normally be divided into groups, like small groups of 3 to 4 students or so, and they need to do projects or tasks. So this is where you can actually see, how your child responds to different types of thinking and the demands that are placed on them. So like when you look at this kind of group projects, maybe one child, they might be coming up with ideas really quickly, like for presentations and like shooting out ideas just like that. But they may have issues with trying to organize these ideas. So it's almost like it's flowing out, but it's flowing out different directions. So that's kind of like how a very creative child might function. And on the other hand, like a more structured child, a more cognitive child, They can create like timelines, checklists, action plans, the whole structure to it. The organization is there. But then when it comes to like organizing comes to generating ideas, like original ideas, that's where maybe they might like be the roadblock. Sometimes they may struggle a bit. That's not to say that again that one child is worse than the other or both have issues, but you can see that actually both children are contributing in very valuable way and they have valuable strengths. And the thing is, it's not to like turn one of the child into another or the other way around. It's not to make the creative child cognitive or to make the cognitive child creative, but it's about seeing the strengths that they have and also trying to bring up the strengths while trying to find that balance as well. Okay, so now let's take a look at maybe some more specific like tips you can actually use at home. So parenting, it becomes more consistent when we actually recognize that, as mentioned, different children, they need different approaches, right? So it's about seeing what strengths they have and how can you bring those up. And here are some of the practical strategies that we can share. Firstly, it's supporting the process. So to try to support the process. So, okay, now just want to check with everyone here. When your child makes a mistake, what is it that you usually do? What is your first instinct? Do share in the comments. I want to hear what you say. Provide hints. Okay, thank you, Mr. Brian Lee, for sharing. Provide hints. Nice. Anything else? Any other thoughts? So when a child makes a mistake, what's your first instinct? Like, what is the first reaction that you have? I ask him to try again. Okay, let's move on. Maybe it's one more answer. Anyone? Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so, but the answers provided so far are pretty interesting ones, good ones. So providing hints and asking them to try again. And that's great. I think I do like the approaches that you're both coming from. Some parents, on the other hand, they might want to just step in and correct a mistake or solve the problem immediately. Like they just want to take full control. Of course, this comes from a good place, right? It's not like the parents are trying to hurt the child or trying to be too controlling over the child. They're trying to help. Obviously, we're trying to help kids. We want to help them solve problems. But learning actually develops when the children are given the space, right, to think, to make mistakes, and also to try and like learn how to work through the challenges themselves. Like try to be a bit independent sometimes. And the parents, they play the role of not having to provide answers all the time. And I think that's maybe something that some parents don't really realize. It's like, yes, you're trying to help your child, but sometimes you need to help your child learn, not just help the child learn to solve a problem. So the role that some parents can actually learn how to play is to just guide the thinking process. So as Mr. Brian shared, to provide hints. I think that's a great way to do that, to guide the thinking process. It's like you're not giving the full answer, you're just kind of like giving them prompts. I assume, Mr. Brian, like you just like give certain prompts or certain ideas, like what you can do to solve this problem. And that can actually help your child think for himself or herself, and try to come to the solution on their own. Okay, so let's look at an example here as well. So for example, just imagine your child tries to solve a math problem and they do it incorrectly. So some parents might just say, okay, wrong, do it again, try again, do it again. And that, I mean, of course, you're just trying to encourage them to keep trying, right? I guess Ms. Akshatha shared, try again. But I think there's a good way of encouraging them, and there's also maybe a not that great way of encouraging them. Like you try not to be too demanding in that way. So you could instead try asking, like, show me how you arrived at that answer. So when you do this, it's like you'll discover that the thinking process might actually be quite reasonable that they apply. They're actually thinking about it in a reasonable way, even if the final answer was incorrect. So it means that you can understand how they think and how they come to a certain solution or come to a certain a result. And if the thinking process actually makes sense, then you can understand it better, and I can actually just work through that process instead of just looking at the result or the outcome. And I think that's definitely a lot more effective way for long-term learning. And it actually applies in everyday situations as well. Like, if you take another example, like say your child is playing with their toys, but they want to look for their favorite toy, and they can't find their favorite toy in the box and toy box. Or say even if it's like a water bottle, like they lost a water bottle and they can't find it before leaving the house or going to school. So we might have the instinct of just like, just to get things over with. We'll say, okay, it's right there. Let me just go get it for you and find it for you. But remember, we do want to try and encourage them to learn on their own. So you could just say something like, where was the last place you remember using it or putting it? Or where have you already checked? Maybe you want to go check there again. Maybe you just missed it. So, you're giving the prompts here, you're giving the hints here, like the simple questions to encourage your child to think through a problem step by step. So it's a process here. So over time, they can then learn, like they are capable of finding their own solutions. They are capable of being independent. And that, it means that they don't always have to rely on the adult to help them solve the problem. Okay, so yes. Next one is make creativity and cognition part of daily life. So now you may be thinking, so like, how do you actually support creativity and cognitive skills, like in our children, like together? What do you do? And the good news here is that supporting both of these aspects, it doesn't always require like programs, classes, or like spending extra hours in the day. It doesn't require that much extra effort because you can actually do it in daily life. Like just the things that you're doing every day is already sufficient. So it could be something as simple as like, right here, you can see like building something with a Lego or just doing a puzzle, creating your own games. You want a child to experiment with like little toys and materials and creating own games, or even doing role play, like thinking up imaginary scenarios, telling stories or talking about their day at school, having a conversation, explaining ideas, or even like retelling their favorite books. So you're encouraging that expression of their thoughts and even like making small decisions for themselves, like choosing what clothes to wear or deciding in what order they want to do their tasks or like their homework or even like playtime, like what do you want to do first and then what do you want to do next, or screen time, like what do you want to watch? Do you want to watch something today? Yeah, so these are not like extra activities, right? It's like the things that you do in daily life, things that you and the kids probably do every day. So these are also ways to really bring out the creative and the cognitive side of things for them. And the goal here is not to constantly keep them occupied activities, of course. I mean, since it's already something you do every day, it's not like you're adding on more things, but it's to create an environment where it's like the thinking, the questioning, like the exploring, it becomes a part of daily life. And that also leads to more creating, more creativity as well. Okay, so that's that. And the next one is manage emotional reactions. So this is from the perspective of parents, like how we approach it as well, and what we experience for ourselves when we are, when we're interacting with our kids. So it's very important as well how we respond. In that goes without saying. Then if you talk about maybe a clinical and an educational perspective, right? So one of the strongest predictors of a child's willingness to learn is whether they feel emotionally safe, especially when they make mistakes. So they want to know that they are free to make the mistakes without being like scolded or without being made to feel, like they've really messed up big time, like they've done something very wrong. Of course, sometimes, they do make quite significant mistakes, but as long as we understand that, these kids, obviously kids, they're still exploring, right? They're still learning. You want to make sure that they have that space to make mistakes, right? So when mistakes are met with like calm guidance, when you just try to guide them instead of like showing the frustration and that anger, then children, they can actually see things in a more like wider ranging way. They can see the bigger picture and they can like separate making mistakes from being a failure, for example. So they don't get that core belief that they're a failure and they, because they made a mistake, that means they're completely messed up and they're a complete failure. So it's important to kind of help them make that separation. Okay, so if you talk about a supportive environment, like what are some things you can do? For example, allowing mistakes without harsh reactions. So again, like let them make the mistake and try not to be too harsh in your reaction. Just try to advise them calmly and to tell them, okay, maybe this is what you did wrong, this is what you can do better. And next is encourage effort, strategy, and persistence over perfect outcomes. So again, you don't want to look too hard at the results and the outcomes, but the effort and the process. Reducing fear-based correction. You don't want to instill that fear in them too much. You don't want them to be like constantly scared that they're going to make a mistake. And lastly, normalizing mistakes as part of the learning process. Again, it goes back to the learning process. Mistakes will happen. Difficulties will be there. Challenges will be there. But as long as we try to take it as being all part of the learning process, I think that can definitely help build that interaction you have with your child. So over time, this kind of emotional consistency that parents show, it also helps to build your child's resilience because they have that safe, secure foundation to fall back on. Okay, so for the next one, it's correct timing, not just behavior. So the thing here is maybe something we overlook at times as well is timing. Timing is important, especially in terms of the timing that we choose to be a parent or to parent your child in a certain way when you respond to your child's struggle. So we talked about, how parents react when a child makes a mistake, right? So many parents, they tend to just jump in straight away and try to solve the problem for them and try to find something that they lost or something like that. And what happens is the child, they may get distracted and then they refuse to start a task or refuse to do it on their own. But in that moment, right, sometimes we need to realize that when we're trying to immediately jump in, the child, they may not be emotionally or mentally ready to process the feedback and to respond to whatever's happening. So when we immediately jump in, it's like they don't have the time to really see what's happening right there for themselves and to analyze what's happening and process it and choose to behave or choose an action on their own. So that's why timing, it matters just as much as correction itself. Because if you take an example, right, during homework time, instead of continuing to correct the child who's already frustrated, they made a mistake in your homework and they're already frustrated and they're resisting, they don't want to continue doing it. It's actually more effective sometimes just pause, to just take a break for a while. And then you return to the task later when the emotions are calmer. If you're also starting to feel frustrated due to your child's frustration, then both are already both you and your child are already in an very emotional state, right? So it may not be the best moment to react in that moment or to make a decision or to take an action. So why not just say, okay, let's just pause for a while. Let's just take a bit of time to think and to relax. And then we can come back and work on this together. So this is, I think, a more effective way actually to really go through or to deal with certain situations. Okay, so on the side of your child, in terms of their emotions, when they are more regulated, they are then able to reflect and to listen and to actually process the feedback better because, of course, while they're still young, they are also learning a lot more about emotions and they're still not maybe used to dealing with certain emotions themselves. But if you're able to guide them to take the pause and to listen and reflect and process what's going on, so this again helps them separate the emotional learning from the learning itself, the emotional moment from learning itself. So they don't have to feel so emotionally charged and so overwhelmed with the emotion. And as parents, what happens there is we also feel more calm and more relaxed in our approach as well. Okay, so yes, that concludes some of the sharing of the practical strategies that they can use. So maybe we just want to look at some of the final reflections for now. And to conclude, again, the goal is the goal is understanding creativity and cognitive skills, right? And it's not to label children or to limit them so much. It's better to understand, how children learn and to think and develop. So when parents understand these differences, they're able to respond much better. So we believe that every child has the potential to succeed, but again, success does not always look the same. Different children respond differently to different situations and different environments. And some children, they respond better maybe through, or they succeed better through structure and consistency. and others maybe through creativity exploration. So these are both two different strengths that different children might have, but most children probably need a combination of both. And the key here is to recognize that children, they're not all starting from the same blueprint, from the same foundation, because each child comes with their own combination of strengths, challenges, personality traits, cognitive tendencies, and even learning preferences, right? And it comes from genetics as well as life experiences. So both these factors are actually very important in determining how a child develops. Okay, so just address this question here. How do I know if my child has strong creative skills or cognitive skills? Okay, that's actually a very good question. I think, sometimes we might struggle to make that distinction, but I think you can actually take a close look at like what are the skills that they show, and like what are the specific behaviors that they have. So creative skills, obviously, it's more like the original ideas that they're coming up with, and the like out of the box thinking you might actually notice. And if you see that you're always exploding with ideas, you're always like sharing their thoughts and always opening up to you, then they might have a tendency to be creative and to be very open. And cognitive skills, on the other hand, you might see that, again, as you mentioned before, like the structure, they have that structure in the way they do things, and they can really manage like certain ideas and have that sort of organization, and they like to follow like certain steps in the things that they do. So then you can see that they have a cognitive sort of processing in their mind. So these are just some ways you can learn to recognize the cognitive and the creative skills that they have. Okay, so I hope that addressed the question. Yeah, so again, the goal here is, not to make children all learn in the same way, right? Okay, the one size fits all approach doesn't always work. And it's about understanding what each child is strong at, how each child learns best, and then you provide the support that fits who they are. So we want to understand what their best abilities are. Okay, so let me just conclude here with a helpful reflection for parents, maybe something for you to ponder upon. So instead of asking, why is my child not learning like others, maybe what could actually work better to ask is, how does my child learn best, and how can I support that? All right. So thank you for joining us today, and I hope this session was very fruitful to you and very beneficial, and you learned something. So yeah, I'll pass it back to Pukri.
All right. So thank you so much, Ms. Tafi, and also Darwin, for the insightful sharing about today's topic. And for our parents who have joined the session, we hope you too have gained all the information shared. And that next page, please. We have also prepared a special parenting guide for today's session. So parents, you can take a screenshot or you can straight away scan the QR code so that you won't miss the summary of today's workshop. You can give me a little thumbs up if you're done. All right, okay. So also, as what our consultants have shared during the session about the DNA, such as next page, such as about their artistic potential, the learning ability, and then the personality part, and also many other traits. So one way that parents can gain deeper clarity about the child's natural tendencies is basically through the DNA testing. So basically just through the simple saliva swab procedure, parents can actually already able to decode over 120 inborn potential across the key areas such as on the talent category, personality, emotional intelligence, learning ability, about the health and also nutrition tendencies, like how a child may respond to certain nutrients and environments. Okay, so it is about giving parents the clarity. So nurturing becomes more intentional and supportive, and also align with who the child truly is based on their genetic blueprint. All right, next page. Next page. All right, so now let's move on to the Q&A session. So I would like to open the floor to parents who might have any questions for our speakers today. So you can either open up your mic to speak, or you can just feel free to type your question in the chat box. So let's give a moment for our parents to think or maybe to type out the questions. And it's easier if you just open up your mind and speak, okay? All right. So we have one question here from Ms. Aksha Tapai. Which cognitive skill has the biggest impact on academic performance? And we also have another from Iqmal Daniel. So I think we can address one at a time. So Darwin, would you like to address the questions?
Yeah, sure. I'll take the questions. So,
Alright.
which cognitive skill has the biggest impact on academic success? Okay, that's a great question, actually. So, of course, cognitive skills can be a few different types of skills we're talking about here that could relate to intelligence, like verbal intelligence, memory as well. But specifically, working memory. Maybe working memory is one that we can consider to be quite influential or to be quite important here. So, what is working memory? Working memory is like kind of like the short-term memory that you use when you're trying to follow instructions, when you are trying to remember the instructions, like the steps to do something. For maybe like an example is like when you're trying to do maths problems, right? You're trying to remember what are the steps to solve a problem, like the formula you have to use, and even when you're reading something, like you're trying to remember what you read and understanding what you read in a certain like text. So these are all just like different ways that working memory plays a part in our cognitive processing in daily life. And yeah, I think there'll probably be very important in terms of the academic success, right? Because remembering information, remembering formulas, remembering what you study, and solving math problems, like these are just some examples of academic subjects that you will be doing, and that's where cognitive processing really comes into play. And of course, like there are other cognitive skills like attention, even like language skills, like understanding language and like communicating in their language, processing speed, reasoning, logical reasoning, like thinking about something and understanding what you think about something. So those are like some other like cognitive skills. Okay, so that's the first question. The second one, hi, Mr. Iqmal, can too much focus on academic achievement limit my child's creativity? Okay, yeah, so that's maybe it can be quite tricky because of course you want your child to be very good in their academics and like perform well in their studies. But I guess the question there is like how much is too much? Like how much focus is too much? Like are you still allowing them to explore things outside of academics or in within the academic circle, like academic topics? Like do you encourage them to think about what they learn in the academics on their own and to generate their own ideas and their own thoughts and to maybe think of creative ways to like process the academic knowledge, like say the way that they study, the way they revise, like do you encourage them to come up with creative ways to learn and maybe say if they're learning one of those really dry subjects like uh, history or like the ones where they have to read a lot, right? Like maybe what if they try to learn it through like sing song or like trying to write it in a way where it's more like story, like you're telling a story with whatever they learn. So those are actually creative ways to include creativity in the more cognitive things that they're doing. So I think when you say too much focus on academic achievement, could it limit the child's creativity? You can actually include creativity within academics as well, I think. So then you're kind of finding that balance. But on the wider range, maybe you say that you put too much focus on academic achievement, but then you don't really allow them to explore like creative uh, activities like arts, music, and whatever outside of the academic work that they do. Then in some sense, maybe yes, there could be because they don't have enough exposure to creative activities. So then you might want to think about, what exactly your child is interested in. Like, what if you're actually holding them back from achieving certain creative success? So it helps to really find that balance, and it also helps to understand it from their own perspective as well, your child's perspective, like what do they want to do. So I think that gives a more like holistic development as well. Okay, next we have what activities do I need to do together that help develop my child's thinking skills? Yeah, like reading with them, going through certain like reading materials with them. It doesn't have to be just academic materials. It can even be like just reading for leisure, reading a novel, reading a book, or like reading those picture books if your child is a bit younger. So, and not just reading, but also having a conversation with them about what they read, what they learn. Because if you're encouraging them to maybe explain what they read about, then they're kind of like processing it within their mind as well. Okay, so this is what I read, and this is what I understand. So this is what I'm going to share. This is what I'm going to communicate. So encouraging them to share as well, that also helps their learning because then they're thinking of it from their own perspective. So yeah, reading and having a conversation with them about it can really help. Are cognitive skills different from IQ? So IQ is like a score which measures like various intelligence based skills and intelligence based like measurements. And cognitive skill is very wide ranging. It's not just limited to intelligence. Uh, you might think of IQ as intelligence. It also involves like the earlier question, like what cognitive skills are actually important in academic success. Memory as well. Memory comes into play, attention, and processing, language processing. So cognitive skills is quite wide ranging. It's not just limited to intelligence or IQ. It's just part of it. IQ is just part of it. How do I know if my child has good working memory? Is there any way I can find out? Okay, so working memory, like I mentioned before, it's like the instructions that we can remember, right? Like step-by-step instructions. So, you could just give your child instructions to go maybe, and really like give like a few instructions, like one after one, like a sequence, like go pick up your toys, put them in the box, and close the box, and put the box on the shelf. So, you have these instructions, right, one by one, step by step. So see if they can remember it step by step and perform it according to what you told them. Then that trains their like ability to sequence, to understand the sequence of activities. So you can give that a try. Okay. And next is how do I respond when my child asks difficult questions? Okay, well, that's that's a good question actually. So I guess if you as a parent, you as an adult, you would think there are no difficult questions, right? But sometimes children do have a tendency to ask questions that even we as adults, we don't really think about in a daily life. And we might think, wow, I never thought of it that way. So if you don't know the answer, I mean, if it's a question that they ask that is really something you never thought about or you have no idea about, then, just say, oh, what do you think about it? Why do you think about it? Why do you have that question? Why did you learn it? So then maybe you actually have a way of understanding your child better because you're understanding how they're thinking, like what is going on in their little minds as well. Okay. So this one is, my son is very creative and smart too, but I realize his memory is quite bad sometimes. Such as forgetting instructions. He will get things done, but instructions wise, he hardly follows. Okay, I see. So his memory is quite, there's a bit of issue in memory as well, and he forgets instructions quickly. Okay, yeah. So Miss Leslie, thank you for sharing this. So if I could just ask, like, does he, like, when you give him instructions, for example, like, is he able to pay attention? Like, does he listen quite well? Like maybe there might be a difficulty in terms of that attention that he has when you give him instructions. Okay, I see. Miss Steph is also shared some thoughts here. Yes, I definitely agree. Like obviously cognitive skills are different aspects, multi-dimensional. So working memory, sometimes, as Miss Steffi shared here, it can be a bit difficult to follow step-by-step instructions because sometimes there might be a distraction, or there might be something that interferes with remembering that instructions or certain things in a sequence. So yeah, they might actually miss certain details as Ms. Steffi shared here. Shorter instructions. Yes. So shorter instructions could help. I think that's definitely for sure. And like Ms. Steffi shared as well, like visual reminders. So it could actually be like the way that your child pays attention to information and learns and and receives information. So visuals could be one way to try it out. Like maybe you can draw it out in the chart, like stick the chart on his wall so you can like follow the steps one by one. Or you could, so maybe that's something you can try as well. Okay.
All right. Do we have any more questions from the parents? This has been quite useful for me. Thank you. Any more questions coming from parents? I think maybe that would be all. So thank you so much, Darwin, and also Ms. Steffi for addressing our parents' concerns for today. Okay. So next, let's move on to the promotion part. All right. Next screen, please. So for today's parents who would like to go one step further in understanding your child's natural tendencies, you can purchase our DNA test on our website with promo code STEFFY25 for a special rate. As you can see, you will be getting all the discounted price if you use the promo code STEFFY25. And these reports can give you access to deeper insights into your child's learning styles, emotional tendencies, strengths, sensitivities, and also many more. All right, and I would just like to highlight again for parents, please do scan out the QR code about the parenting workshop, because some of your questions about the activities that you can do with your children to improve their cognitive or creativity, we have all the guides inside the parenting PDF. Okay. And also, parents, please feel free to scan the QR code here if you like any support or you have any further questions after the session, and our team will be happy to assist you further. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for being part of today's session, and we hope today's session has give you all the new perspective and also practical insights on how to better support your child holistically. And also, if you missed out in
I think Leslie is asking a question.
Oh, is it? I missed it.
Can adult use this to
Use this to big cues? Yes, of course, you can try our talent DNA test as well, but I would just like to highlight that the talent test, our recommendations in the report are curated for children between 0 to 15 years old, because it is mainly focused on the development part. But if you're just curious about your genetic tendencies, yes, you can also do it. Okay. I hope that clarifies. And okay, so thank you, everyone. Hope you have a lovely day today, and we hope to see all of you again in our next session. Thank you.